Friends and viewer, good day. Today, let us talk about the novel of William Faulkner, an American writer, and he was very famous for his novel Absalom. And today, the novel which we are going to discuss is the name of the same is The Intruder in the Dust. Intruder in the Dust is written by William Faulkner in 1948. So this Intruder in the Dust by William Faulkner examines racism in mid-20th century Southern America through the tale of a black man wrongly accused of killing a white man. The novel is written in the third-person, limited point of view, following the thoughts, experiences, and perspective of a white teenager named Charles Madison. It opens with Lucas Beauchamp, a black man accused of murdering a white man named Vincent Gowrie, being led to jail by the local sheriff. Watching the scene, Charles recalls meeting Lucas for the first time. 4 years prior to the street, Charles was out hunting rabbit with his black servant Alec with another black boy when he fell off a bridge into a creek. One of the boys lowered down a stick so that Charles could pull himself out of the water, but it did not help. Charles then heard a voice and ordered them to get the stick out of the way so he could climb up. Having pulled himself out, he saw an unknown black man who demanded the boys accompanying him back to his house. On the way there, Charles remembered an old story and recognized the man as Lucas Beauchamp. Inside Lucas' cabin, Charles was grateful to dry his clothes and warm himself by the fire. When Lucas offered him dinner, he attempted to refuse, but Lucas cut off before he could do so. Likewise, when Charles offered to pay the man after the meal, Lucas pretended not to see the money Charles was holding out to him and refused payment. For some time after the incident, Charles' pride was injured by Lucas' refusal to take his money. He attempted to repay the supposed debt, even buying Christmas present for Lucas and his family, only to have his plan foiled when Lucas sent him a present in return. It was not until a couple of years later, when Lucas ignored him in the street, that Charles felt free of any obligation to the man. However, when he hears of Lucas' arrest, he cannot convince himself that he does not truly owe him something, and when Lucas asks him to get his uncle to meet him, he knows he must help. He convinces his uncle Gavin, a lawyer, to meet Lucas in the jail. However, when they get there, Gavin assumes that Lucas committed the murder and promises only to get his sentence reduced to imprisonment rather than hanging if he pleads guilty. Later, Lucas asks Charles to go to the cemetery and exhume the body of the man he is accused of killing so he can check the caliber of the bullet used and prove that Lucas is innocent. When Charles tells his uncle about Lucas' request, Gavin dismisses it as the lies of a guilty man trying to escape justice. Undeterred, Charles asks Alec to get his horse for him so he can go to the cemetery. But when Miss Habersham, an old woman who grew up with Lucas' wife, reveals that she overheard Charles and offers them the use of her truck on the way to the cemetery, a mule passes them in the shadows carrying something that they cannot identify. When they arrive, they notice that the flowers of the grave are disturbed but think little of it. However, when they did dig up the grave, it was not Vincent Gowrie, but a timber merchant named Jake Montgomery, who lies in the coffin. This is enough to convince Uncle Gavin to accompany Charles, Alec, and Miss Habersham to visit the sheriff and persuade him to get legal permission to unearth the coffin. The sheriff agrees, and while Miss Habersham and Charles' mother stand guard at the prison on the assumption that Southern gentlemen would not try to get past them to lynch Lucas, they go to the cemetery. So what happened at the cemetery? They meet Gowrie's father, accompanied by two of the Vincent's brother. Gowrie's father initially refused to let them dig up the grave, but relents and orders his sons to do it. However, when they unearth an empty coffin, the sheriff deduces that anyone attempting to dispose of the bodies of both Vincent Gowrie and Jake Montgomery in such a short amount of time would not have traveled far, so they search the nearby woodland. They find a trail of hoof prints that match the Gowrie's boy's mule and follow it to a ditch where they find Jake Montgomery body. Further on, they find Vincent Gowrie buried in a quicksand, and the sheriff looks at the wounds and concludes that they were not done by Lucas' gun, but a gun like the one owned by Vincent Gowrie's brother, Crawford. After returning home, Charles realizes why the Gowrie family and other white people did not try hard to lynch Lucas. They already knew that Lucas was innocent because Vincent Gowrie had been killed by his own brother. Charles is disgusted and enraged by the fact that even though they did not try to kill Lucas themselves, they were happy to let him be arrested or executed. Charles then learns the exact detail of the whole sordid tale. Vincent and Crawford Gowrie had been in business together selling timber, but Crawford had been secretly taking some of the timber off to sell on his own. By chance, Lucas had noticed this, so Crawford tricked him into waiting in the woods carrying a gun and then shot Vincent and hid, waiting for Lucas to be found nearby. That way he was able to kill the brother he had been stealing from and ensure that the only person who had witnessed his theft was framed for the murder. When he went to dig up his brother's body, he found Jake Montgomery, the man whom he was selling the stolen timber, already exhuming the corpse. Realizing that Montgomery must be aiming to prove his guilt, Crawford shot him and put him in the coffin. Later, after Charles, Alec, and Miss Habersham dug up the grave the first time, Crawford snuck back and removed Jack's body too. As the novel ends, Crawford commits suicide in prison while Lucas is released, and proud and flinching to the end, goes to the Uncle Gavin and rewards the lawyer who always assumed he was guilty by paying him for his service entirely in pennies. Part of the body of work that won Faulkner the Nobel Prize for Literature, Intruder in the Dust, and the Dust is celebrated both for its uncompromising portrayal of Southern racism and its stylistic qualities, including that adept use of stream of consciousness. It was adapted into a successful movie in 1949 and remains a classic example of Southern Gothic literature. So, dear friends and viewers, this is the nutshell and the story of the Intruder and the Dust by William Faulkner. So I hope you will enjoy this while going through this book by William Faulkner and also studying its other novel, Absalom and Absalom. So thank you for your patient listening.